Hey all. So we're going to talk about money and, well, possibly the end of it, but we'll let you decide. But it's quite a technical topic, so we're not going to go too deep into it. We're going to try to make it as a concept, and hopefully it'll tease you into maybe researching it yourself, or talking to me after, or just hating me. So it depends on how you look at it. So before I start, I'm going to tell you a story of, I needed some business cards about 2 years ago, and so I didn't have time to create them. Usually I design them myself, and I went online and I found one of those freelancer networks, and I found a freelancer in Gaza who does business cards. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So, might as well. So I went online and I'm, talking to her, and how can I get my business cards? She's like, yeah, cool, but how are we going to do the payment? And then this is something I didn't know at the time, is how difficult it is to actually send money or wire it or anything like that through all the way to Gaza. And things like Western Union deal with intermediaries and all that sort of stuff to actually send it there. So I thought actually one of the best ways to do it is maybe leverage what I know about Bitcoin. Maybe I'll be able to find something. So I found one guy in Ramallah who was able to, we're talking about $20, by the way. We're not talking about that much more. So probably about an hour's worth of our time or something. So I found this guy in Ramallah who wanted to buy Bitcoins, and I asked him, do you actually ever go to Gaza? And then he was saying, well, I have a cousin who lives in Gaza. So I was like, can you please ask your cousin to give this lady $20 and I'll send you some Bitcoins from here. And that way we could actually complete the transaction. So I'm not sure if the girl now believes in Bitcoin or not, but it was just a story worth telling about it. So, okay, what's going on here? So what is Bitcoin? So it's quite a complex topic, like I said. I'm going to try to go through a number of analogies and try to see how we can get along. So money, gold, and DNA, three things that we all know relatively. We know how they work and what they are. So money allows you to transfer value from yourself to someone else. You'll be able to buy things with it. You transfer your money somewhere else and buy something with it. But gold maintains value. So money is inflated every year by governments and, well, by central banks. And so gold doesn't have that as part of its structure or its value. So gold is actually mined. So it retains its value. So if you had gold in the 80s, you're actually probably quite a rich person now. If you had some back then, you invested in it, but things actually change over time. With gold is volatile, but overall, the more demand that there is for gold, it actually keeps going up. And the DNA is a way for you to be able to kind of trace your ancestry, whether it's to creatures all the way, the beginning of evolution, depends how you believe. Or if you're talking about, why do you have blue eyes? Why do you have brown hair or blonde hair? So you can actually trace every single block of your genetic structure backwards based on your current DNA. So here's kind of a dictionary definition of it. It's not in the dictionary, I just made that up. But it's, it's worth making. Somebody's got to do it, right? So one way to explain it is to use the structure of, or the methods that Swiss bank accounts are created. So a Swiss bank account has, like the typical Swiss bank account, not just any normal one, is that you have an account number and then you have a password. With that password or passphrase, if you do have one of those accounts, you'll be able to access all the money in this account and actually do with it whatever you want. So these passphrases are usually kept in people's brains who actually have access to these accounts. So imagine if you have that kind of account. You can go and do retail, shopping, whatever, buy some purchases, but there's no transaction fee from it at all, whatsoever. But then yet better, there is no bank. There's actually no card. There's nobody in the middle holding that money for you. So, so imagine email. It's a platform that was given to the world as a gift in the 90s, where nobody owns the platform of email. Email allows you to send messages from you to someone else across the world, or when it first started, you were able to only send people within your network, but the internet wasn't really popular yet. And then you're allowed to send now, it allows you to send emails across the planet completely for free. And nobody owns the platform of email, but yet you have companies like Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, all these guys, and you can create a company based on that platform. You can maybe, for example, Microsoft Outlook, they charge money for buying Outlook, which is fine because you're providing a service on top of a platform that is free. So there's a lot of platforms like this where the platform is actually free, but then you're being charged for using a particular service that somebody actually offers you, which is totally cool, actually. So Bitcoin is in a very similar way is also a platform. So nobody owns the Bitcoin platform. It's not a company. We're nowadays based on the idea that every new idea has to be some kind of startup and it's funded by some people and everybody wants the profits out of it and all that sort of stuff. No, we're actually, as if we're back in the 90s, somebody just invented the internet and given it to the world as a free idea. This is exactly what's happening with Bitcoin. Nobody owns the Bitcoin network. So it allows you to send value to each other. Instead of sending emails, sending messages, or anything like that, you can send value, actual value, free of charge. And companies like Coinbase, BitPay, or Umbrellab, our company, we build services on top of the Bitcoin network so that we're able to, for example, facilitate these payments to other people. And of course, you can charge for it or sometimes not charge for it, which is our model. But yeah, so that's basically what we do. So it's also a commodity, and this is where the idea of its similarities with gold come in. So it's deflationary in the fact that there is no inflation happening every year in Bitcoin the same way it happens with cash or with currencies or sovereign currencies. It's created digitally by miners. Miners is simply a word that was coined by the Bitcoin network, I would say. And the miners are basically the people who provide processing power to maintain the network. And this processing power is being paid back as it gets paid back as a reward for these people providing their processing power. And these miners will get that reward in new Bitcoins. So that's basically the creation of Bitcoin. So there's a few, and I think we're going to be discussing it afterwards as well in a bit more detail. So, but it's actually quite a complex technical topic. So the price depends on supply and demand. So there's nobody trying to manipulate the market. There's no, insider trading of Bitcoin because it's an open market. So exactly like gold. The more you buy, people might think, oh, there's a lot that's been bought, and everybody starts buying as well. Supply and demand completely controls the market. And yeah, you can trade it online, exchanges, trading platforms, face-to-face. I can now take my phone out and send one of you Bitcoins. And I don't know, maybe we'll choose actually somebody lucky and send you some Bitcoins after. So, but one of the most interesting parts of Bitcoin is the fact that it's decentralized. So it's decentralized as in nobody owns it, which is something we already said. But how does that actually work? So I have a computer, one that's actually running this presentation, so it has a copy of the entire Bitcoin network on it. My partner in the business also has a copy. We have one in the office, but we're not special. There are hundreds of thousands of people around the world who also have copies of this network. And based on that idea, if anybody tries to manipulate the network, there are so many backups around the world that nobody can actually simply go and control it. I can hack my own machine and hack my Bitcoin, but it's just going to fail when I connect it to the rest of the network because the network kind of says, sorry, it doesn't match everybody else's, which is how Bitcoin maintains itself. This is how it's decentralized. And so central banks cannot issue Bitcoin because the network itself issues it. And governments cannot run the network either. So no single entity can actually turn it off. So to switch Bitcoin off, you're going to have to switch off the internet. Maybe switch off electricity everywhere in the world. But that's actually only momentary as well. So Bitcoin mining, so the process of creating Bitcoin is quite a huge market for that. It started off with people around like 2009, people connecting their laptops, and you're able to, even like on a smartphone, you were able to mine Bitcoins and just make some money out of it. But back then, Bitcoin was worth nothing. So people started coming up with new ideas. The more you try to mine, so imagine you have a mountain with gold mines inside it. And then the more people that try to go and mine gold out of that mountain, the more difficult it's going to be for you to start mining. So you might employ some more people as part of your team so that you make a bigger operation so that you can mine more than anybody else. But then there might be somebody bigger than you at the end and coming to mine more. So Bitcoin mining works in the same way. So you're able to connect to your computer and then start mining, but now there are huge operations. So it started off after laptops. There was those ASICs, which is like this USB stick with a B on it. It's a sign for Bitcoin. And people were just like buying these on Amazon and plugging them into their computers so that you're able to now, there's a cat over there. So people are able to mine Bitcoins using these ASICs. But then some people were like taking it a notch further, and they were thinking, well, actually, why not connect a few graphics cards and create a huge amount of processing power into what's called a Bitcoin rig? But then some people thought, wow, I'm making so much money out of this. Why not do it better? and then build, go get a warehouse and actually fill it with Bitcoin miners. And this process has become so huge now that the power of Bitcoin processing has surpassed the top 500 supercomputers in the world combined times 1,000. This is the size of the Bitcoin network at the moment. So the value is still low, but it seems like this technology is here to stay. So who created it? So there's a few things about the creator of Bitcoin. It's the fact that nobody really knows who it is. It's a group of people, one guy, one girl, nobody knows who it is. But it's a person who came up with an invention, put it up as a white paper on an encryption and mathematics forum, like how geeky, right? So this person actually put up as a white paper, and then all the developers around the world started collaborating to create the Bitcoin network as an open source software. So it doesn't really matter who created it, but someone did and gave it as a gift to everybody. So we can see the code, but it doesn't really matter. But then Newsweek, somebody was here from Newsweek actually earlier. She should see this, but I'm not sure if she is. So Newsweek tried to do an investigative journalism process into finding out who Satoshi Nakamoto actually is. So they found this guy, and his name is Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto. And they were like, this is the guy, and they had a 4 or 5 page article about it. But then the real Satoshi Nakamoto went back onto the forum where all the developers were, and he just said, no, I'm not Dorian Nakamoto. So I think a few people got fired in Newsweek. So, so why does Bitcoin matter? And why am I here, right? So there are thousands of cryptocurrencies on the internet. So there's like the most famous ones like Litecoin, Ripple, Stellar, Dogecoin, Feathercoin, NXT. But there are, like, as you can see, this is a screenshot of about 2 years ago. So there were probably about 300 or 400 at the time, but now we have thousands. But the reason Bitcoin is the famous one is simply because it's the first one, and it's the one that people put all their trust in, because it's the biggest one as well. It's the widest net that has been cast. It's the biggest network. So you can trust it a lot more because there's more backups of it. So there are certain things that happen in the world every day, transactions and finance and banking, that created necessity for some other people to start innovating around technologies to be able to find ways that make things easier to trade commodities or buy or sell or get salaries or anything like that, or send money, right? So one of those bigger problems is the fact that 53% of the world is unbanked. So this means everybody in the world between the age of 18 and upwards, so over the age of 18, is 53% of them are unbanked. And usually, if you can see at the map also, usually they're from the poorer countries. And this also means that everybody between the age of, let's say, 13 to 18 is unbanked as well. That's 100% of those people, right? So it's also another huge demographic. Maybe I should add it on here as well. But so if you're thinking all these people don't have access to bank accounts, maybe it doesn't mean that much to you. But imagine like somebody can, let's say, does wicker baskets in a village somewhere for, a small example. But they can actually only sell within the vicinity of their village or town or wherever they are, or wherever they can actually distribute or find a distributor. So if you have somebody in Dubai who makes wicker baskets, I'm pretty sure they can sell them on Etsy and start exporting them worldwide, simply because they have access to international finance. But 53% of the world do not, which puts them in a position that they're unable to do very much outside of their vicinity. How's that? So Bitcoin offers fast and cheap, decentralized, complex financial services to everybody without geographical borders. Bitcoin is not really interested where you live. It's not interested what some people a few hundred years ago decided where the border of your country is. It doesn't know or doesn't care about how the political structure or the financial structure or what your bank thinks or what you think or anybody else. Bitcoin just simply works, and it's based on mathematics, not even on human opinion, which is one of the things that make it actually work really well. And without the need for third parties, you can completely remove fees, which have been almost completely removed. And the fee right now is something like 1/100th of a cent. And it's only going to go lower the more people get into the network as well. So imagine that compared to, let's say, Western Union or something. I shouldn't name brands, right? I shouldn't. So the remittance market, speaking of, is on the rise. So there's more people being born every year, the population is rising, and there's more workers trying to travel to go for places with more money. And they all want to try to send money back to their countries. So this is a market that we know is going to keep growing, but they're being charged somewhere between 5 and 10% usually for doing any remittance from one country to the other. But usually the poorest people, like the more remote your village is, where your parents live, for example, or the less money that you're sending, you're actually being charged a lot more, sometimes up to about 30 or 40%. So imagine if that's all for free, right? So if you offer a remittance service using Bitcoin free of charge, why wouldn't you be able to send all the money that you have? So it will allow people to start, if you actually take all the transactions and remittances now and remove all the fees completely, and then just keep 1% fee for whoever is the company that is creating that remittance service on top of the Bitcoin platform, which they're allowed to charge for because it's a service, right? So if they're only charging 1%, you're saving everybody in the remittance ecosystem $200 billion a year. This is a huge amount of money. This is only charges. So what's happening in the ecosystem and how can you use it today? So this is about a week ago I took this. So it's a screenshot of the number of businesses worldwide that are accepting Bitcoin. And these are only 2 companies. So there's Coinbase and BitPay at the bottom, right? So Coinbase and BitPay provide merchant services. And these are the number of businesses worldwide that are accepting Bitcoin today. And it's only been on the rise since these companies started around 2013. But the interesting fact is also it doesn't count all the people who decided to accept Bitcoin on their own without going through a service, because if you have a smartphone, you can actually accept Bitcoin now. So you don't actually need to sign up with those services. But some people do because they trust them as a bank or as an exchange to liquidate their Bitcoin after. So some of the brands that are accepting it today, there's a lot more, of course, but these are just some brands I think everybody will be familiar with, so I chose those. But one of the first ones was Virgin Galactic and Tesla Motors, actually, which I thought was really cool because, we know Branson and Elon Musk are usually the, quite innovative people and forward-thinking, trendsetters, if you like. And we're also scoring headlines recently, so it's pretty cool. So the Bitcoin, I'm going to say we, but it's the Bitcoin ecosystem. So we're actually, there's a lot more coverage happening in the media nowadays. Usually it happens when the Bitcoin value goes up, which happened around 2012, 2013. But now it's starting to become the more the financial industry and bankers are starting to hear about it, they're starting to think, wow, this is actually really amazing. I could start doing all the stuff I'm doing now in finance, completely program it. You can actually program money. So imagine if I can have like $10 in my pocket and I will give it to, let's say my friend Diana's in the audience, I'll give her like $10 and I can program those $10 to actually do something. And let's say in a day, if she doesn't deliver a particular service, the $10 will come back to me. Like how amazing is that? You can program actual money and those $10 will be programmed differently from other $10 or $5 or $1, right? So bankers are starting to get into this and think, wow, this is actually an amazing technology. And people are mostly interested in the blockchain, which is the underlying technology that controls Bitcoin. So this is the current Economist cover, which is now, this week. I didn't get a copy yet, but I should. So lending is another part of the banking industry that is quite huge. So there's peer-to-peer lending that is happening. With the fact that Bitcoin can facilitate micropayments, which you can't do now, like if I can't wire $1 or 50 cents to somebody, there's a minimum for this kind of stuff because the fees are so high. So when it comes to Bitcoin, you can actually lend small amounts, micropayments to people who are, let's say, salaries coming in end of the month. They just want to borrow a small amount of money to get them through the next couple of weeks, and then they pay it back. And so far, they've done over 18,000 loans. This is from a company called Bitcoin Jam. So a few of the banks have also been involved as well. So some of the banks have been participating with other startups, like Fidor Bank was one of the first ones. It's in Germany. They offer their customers a Bitcoin account on top of your online account that you have with them in euros. Barclays also started accepting Bitcoin as money for charities, which is pretty cool. It's one of the first use cases as well. And, but then some are actually investing in startups as well, like Goldman Sachs. So it's building up, and a lot more people are starting to wake up to the idea. So this is the first Bitcoin accepting business in the Middle East. They're called the Pizza Guys. We became friends with these guys because we used to go there and eat pizza all the time, and we used to hold our Bitcoin meetups there, which are like, just maybe 5 or 10 people would come, usually geeks and teenagers and coders who are just like, really need a shower. But we would all, meet up in this pizza place, and one day the owner comes over to me and he's like, well, what are you guys talking about? Blah, blah, blah. Explain it to me. So I took them through it, and they were like, you know what if we accept it? I'm like, well, if you accept it, I'm going to get you that sticker, right? So I got him that sticker, and they got coverage all over. I mean, they made something like 50 Bitcoin transactions in the first couple of months. And that's at a time, this is 2013, where Bitcoin was virtually unheard of in this region. They even had a group from Hong Kong of Bitcoin enthusiasts who traveled the world looking, basically rich Chinese people. So they went around the world looking for Bitcoin businesses and stuff like that. They actually visited the pizza guys and had a really amazing time. We were there, took photos with them and everything like that. They were really happy to see it, and they actually came to see Dubai and all that, but they weren't expecting to see a Bitcoin accepting business. So that was pretty cool. So our company, what me and my partner Sergey do is we try to build services on top of the Bitcoin platform. So we've done a few things that some people might think ooh, that's, be careful, you shouldn't, and some things were actually applauded. So we've got a bit of coverage because of actually this story. So we released the first Bitcoin ATM in the Middle East, and the usual way people release ATMs around the world is that they say, oh, San Francisco just got its first Bitcoin ATM. We did it Dubai style, so we launched 400 of them. His name is Dr. Bitcoin. He's actually quite famous in the Bitcoin circles. His name is Alejandro. And he came to do the first Bitcoin transaction on a Bitcoin ATM, which means you put money in and you get Bitcoins out sent to your phone. And we sent this photo online about, these are all the different ATMs and boxes and all that. We started doing this, but we had to suspend them. You can guess why. So, but we're going to relaunch that at some point because we have to go through the regulatory issues and, talk to the central bank and see how we can actually do this. So another one of our services is what if you can actually go and instead of buying a scratch card from a petrol station to top up your mobile phone with more credit, right? What if you could just do it online on your phone without having to go anywhere, right? So you have Bitcoins on your phone already. You just go somewhere and then you just send the Bitcoin within your phone and it just tops up your credit. You don't have to go anywhere, right? But even if you're traveling, let's say you're from the States, you come here to Dubai and then you want to top up your phone, so you have to call your friend, can you buy a scratch card, send me the number or whatever. I don't know how it works in the States, I've never been, but I would guess it's probably not that more advanced than, let's say, here in Europe, right? It's probably the same kind of system. So, but now you can do this with Bitcoin online, and it's free of charge as well. So we have about 5,000 transactions per month, and it's going actually quite well, but we have 120 countries as well. So we're trying to expand those kind of services to offer more for people to be able to process and use Bitcoin transactions to just make life easier for people. And, but of course there are some regulatory issues whenever you try to get into the money and financial ecosystem. So we were thinking, okay, let's take these Bitcoin ATMs out. Of course we have to, our partner pulled out in the end. And then we're thinking, what shall we do now? But then suddenly we get a phone call and we were invited by the Prime Minister's office to go and start the Blockchain Innovation Group, or called Big MENA. So that's me. Partner wasn't there, he was on holiday actually. So the Blockchain Innovation Group is a group of people that are all within the financial, banking, legal ecosystems within the GCC, but also we have a few Bitcoin startups that are like Dubai-based, Beirut, Jordan, Egypt, and basically all people who are trying to build on top of the Bitcoin network. So we have some events happening at the Innovation Week as well. So stay posted, or if you're, if really this was a great tease of a presentation, then maybe you'll research and come and see some of our workshops. But the biggest question is, will it actually work? I think it has to, because one philosophical aspect of so cool. So one philosophical aspect of life is that whatever you find as a technology that solves your problems and make things easier for you. So for example, you had 20 men working on a particular task, and then somebody came with a steam engine and does the same task, and these men can actually utilize their time to do something else. You cannot unsee this technology. Sure, there are some people who hired these men or you know, they hire horses or whatever. They're going to try to challenge you because they're making a profit out of it. But once you see a really great technology that makes things easier for you, you can't just simply ignore it or unsee it. And this is what Bitcoin is trying to do with the financial industry. So in the same way, email replaced postal services, Gutenberg replaced the elitism of books. So something I found out yesterday, there were 30,000 books in Europe before the invention of the printing press, and then 50 years after, there were more than 10 million books in Europe. So it shows you how people just really thrive and go and follow technologies that really solve their problems, their everyday problems. And of course, the internet, the car, I mean, it just goes and goes, right? So this is the reason why I think it'll work, because it simply facilitates and puts you in control of your own money and your own way of managing your life. How do you want to do things? Do you want to do it the difficult way or the easy way? At the moment, it's still very early stage, but it can actually help. So, but one of the things to try to remember when you think about Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is not there to solve the same problems we have with finance now. So the financial system we have is not actually built with the world we live in today. It wasn't built with that in mind. Credit cards were not built with the internet in mind because nobody knew this was going to happen. So it's not simply an alternative to that. Imagine if we didn't have finance at all. You're building something completely new that's an enabler, something we haven't even imagined. But it could be a threat, right, to some people. So people who are in the financial industry, they have two choices, right? So whenever any technology comes out in any sector, every company has a choice to either, you know, like people who still don't believe in social media, for example, look where they are now. It's going to happen. So people have a choice of either missing out or just actually join in and see what happens, but at least be part of the trend, or if you can, even be a trendsetter. But some people will have, it's kind of an existential threat to them because, for example, money remittances is one of those sectors where it's purely a middleman type of solution. And if this is the core of your business and there's nothing else that you can utilize around that, then there's nothing else you can do when that middleman has been removed, unless you try to innovate on top of that technology and find a way for you to still be involved and be a trendsetter. So is it the end of money as we know it? Could it be something else? I'm not sure. I'll keep it up to you. And yeah, so thanks very much.